Neața,
Neața.
suntem în orașul Idrija. Urmează să vizităm o mină de mercur, care este a doua ca mărime din Europa. În acest moment ea nu mai este exploatată.
Number 3.
Yeah.
This is the representation of this oldest way of working our mine, this is now like the first 250 years here represented. So you can see miners had simple clothes. They had to bring their clothes from their homes. They got uniforms from the mining company only after the Second World War, and they had simple tools too, chisel and hammer. And that way the work was going very slowly. You can imagine if the rocks were hard, then they made maybe just half a meter per day or so. They were kneeling more or less and working more or less in darkness, because here we never had an electricity. As you can see here, this is just made for tourists. Otherwise, it was too wet for such electricity in our mine. So in the past, they were making light with torches and with oil lamps. This here is an example of the oil lamp. They were using oil lamps until the start of the First World War. Later they had lamps on carbide. That was a lamp working based on a chemical reaction between water and carbide. And from 60s they had only electrical lamps on helmets. So hard work, and they worked more or less in darkness. In the back you can see this hand-driven winch. They were using such tools in the past for pumping the water out of the mine. Water was always the problem. They had to pump it out, first with such simple tools. Then later, in the time of Enlightenment in 18th century, they designed this well-known conch, the biggest water wheel in Europe, 13.5 meters big, which was used for pumping the water out of the mine until 1948. Until that time, then they had mechanical pumps for pumping the water. Now let us please continue. Number 4. Now we are in the Chapel of the Holy Trinity. This is the oldest underground chapel in Slovenia, so it's having also its cultural value. The chapel was built in the midst of 18th century, and we are now 25 meters below the surface. Now miners are gathering here. In old times, before they went to work, they were praying here, that they will like find ore, that they will return happily, things like that, and then they went throughout those stairs of work. There were 750 stairs here in the past. Now 117 stairs are still present. Stairs were originally like the last 6 ones, more narrow. Other stairs are renovated for the tourists. Now we will make some kind of a circle and we go then upstairs throughout those stairs. Statues here are the duplicates of the original ones. In the midst is the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, the pigeon, and then the statues of 2 saints, which were also connected with the mine here. This is Saint Barbara, and in the Catholic Church she is known as the intercessor for the miners. And Saint Hans was chosen as a local saint because on his date, the 2nd of June, 1508, they discovered one really big vein of ore here. And this day, 22nd of June, still is the feast for the miners in Idrija. We are having the lace festival at that time in our town. Because women in the past in Idrija were making lace. Now because lace are beautiful, they were selling well. That's how they got more money for families, which were normally big, and they had to collect some more money with the help of this craft of lace making. Yeah, let us please continue here. Let's go. in the time of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. You were watching the video, you saw mine was going almost 400 meters deep, and there was really a big net of tunnels. They built more than 700 kilometers of tunnels here throughout history. So you can imagine building of the railway was progressing slowly. Before they had the railway, they were pushing the wagons on wood. Now here is a representation of this old way of the work in our mind, but this is now 19th or early 20th century here represented. So you can see miners still had hats, not helmets, clothes brought from their homes, not uniforms, and here in Idrija, in our mind, always just men were working, never women or children. Men were normally working here in couples because of the security and because the work was organized on that way. One of the guys here was called in the local language of the miners higher, and he was then pounding with that kind of a curved hammer, which was called schlänger by the miners, an iron stick, which was called spitza, and another one was switching that stick around, and that's how they were slowly making holes like there in the wall, which were later filled with explosive and detonated. So here they were already using the dynamite. The shovel there was called krotza by the miners, and it was used as some kind of innovation because it's more easy to operate with it in those tunnels as it is with the normal shovel. So with that shovel with krotza, you put ore in that plate in trickle, and then you fill the wagon with ore. Now, mercury mine in Idrija was in fact the second most big mercury mine in the world. The biggest, however, was Almadén in Spain. Now, Idrija and Almadén were candidating together for the UNESCO's list of cultural heritage, but approximately 10 years ago, they also succeeded. So now this mine is also under the UNESCO protection. They produced around 145,000 tons of mercury here throughout history. The biggest production was in 1913, so just before the start of the First World War, because the demands of the war industry were very high at that time. In the past, they were using mercury in war industry for bullets. The bullets had more power, and they were using it also for quite some other things. For example, for painting the ships, to protect the body of the ship against the sea plants, worms, and so on. And for purifying gold and silver, that was also very important in the past, purifying gold and silver with the help of mercury. They were also using mercury in chemical industry for poisons to destroy wheat, also for thermometers, barometers, because it's the only metal in the form of liquid at room temperatures, reacting to temperature changes quickly. That's why it was good for the thermometers. Then they were using it in medicine. It's poisonous, yes, but it's killing also the bacteria. For the tooth fillings, they were using it. The gray amalgam tooth fillings contained around 50% of mercury inside. So you can see for a lot of things. Today, however, the trade with it is banned, at least in the European Union. There are some exceptions. For example, the saving lamp, saving bulb, the lamp which is sparing less energy, you can still probably find some little amount of mercury inside because it's a good transformer of electricity. That's why it was used for the batteries and switch lights. Yet, generally speaking, it is banned to trade with it now in Europe. However, some countries in the world are still selling, producing it. China, also in Africa, and so on. Okay, let us please continue now. And were used on locations where rocks were more crushy behind to make the location more stable. Wagon number 3 was put hooked by the miners, around 800 kilos of material went in it if it was filled with the rich ore. The guy who was pushing it was called Laufer by the miners, so let's say in English runner. He was like running with those wagons throughout the mine. Yet it is not so hard to push the wagon on the rails, but on the wood, as it was before, it was much harder. Attention on the head, please, it's slow tunnel. So for the fixed iron support, as you can see there, the wood on the top, and then the pillars with such big hammer. Between the pillars you had normally 80 centimeters of distance. I said normally, because in fact it depended how hard the rocks were behind. If the rocks were very hard, maybe no support was needed, but if they were more crushy, then you should put more pillars or even use the steel supports as we saw before down there. So you can imagine mine needed a lot of wood for its work, especially more hard sorts of wood were favored. They were cutting a lot of trees here around Idrija, but apparently they had also quite good plans of foresting back because we have now quite nice forest here around. Now, if you turn around, you'll be able to see they're represented. At the same time, when they were excavating the tunnels, they were already doing the backfilling. This is handmade backfilling. Why? To slow the process of lowering or sinking of the town. Because of the terrain and because of the mine, the town of Idrija is sinking, and that was causing quite some problems in the past, like cracks on houses and so on. Now, when the mine is closed, the town is sinking much less, but still a little bit, like 1 millimeter per year. For the backfilling, they were using different kind of rocks, also burnt ore and so on. Okay, let us please continue and attend to the dwarf of our mine. His name was Bergmandels, and in the past, miners really believed in his existence. They said the dwarf had a tricky nature. If he was in the good mood, he was like showing to the miners by knocking on the walls where they should dig to find ore, and if the dwarf was in the bad mood, he was misleading them, knocking on the wrong spot so that they were also digging in the wrong direction. So tricky dwarf, okay? Bergmandels? Mine. Now attention the floor on the rails. This is branch out originally, so 1/3 of that hole was used for the people to go up and down, and ladders were inside, as you can see, and 2/3 of the shaft were used for the transportation of ore or other material on the lower floors. Why they were doing this, we'll explain later in the picture. Now, if you turn around, you'll be able to see there between the rocks, these are carbonic shales, very old rocks, and between them you can see some little drops of native mercury if you look closely. Bigger or smaller. Now, 30% of mercury in Idrija, almost 1/3, was in that form, just drops between the rocks, and 70% of it was in the form of ore, or let's say the red rocks, which we saw before upstairs. In both forms, they were then burning it in different kind of ovens, which they had here throughout history. They crushed the ore in little pieces, heated it to around 800 degrees Celsius. At that temperature, mercury evaporated. Then they cooled this gas in special pipes. We're cooling the pipes with water or so mercury transformed from the form of gas back into the form of liquid. Some kind of a process of distillation that was, and also mercury was purified. Okay, let us please come closer. This is Laufer runner, the guy who was pushing the wagons throughout the mine. Usually younger miners were doing the job of Laufer or runner, and in the past they were 15 years old when they started to work here in our mine. Now here you can see a reconstruction of the tunnel as it was at the very beginning in 16th century. Height like this, see, 1 meter and 30 centimeters of height, because they had just 2 hammers. And of course the work of digging, excavating the tunnels was progressing only slowly. Yet the tunnels here were well built, protected with wood, as you can see, because also we had a relatively low number of working accidents here throughout history. 300 deaths throughout the time period of 5 centuries, which is a relatively low number also if you compare it to other mines in the world. The biggest accident was at the very beginning in 16th century when water flooded the mine. At that time, around 40 miners were drowned. Mines, let us continue. Okay, now here is the representation of the research drilling. So ore is not everywhere, and in the past they depended more or less on luck. They tried to dig here and there, and maybe they found something or not. But in modern times they were using such machines. This is also Marke & Co. And then they were drilling the research holes with them. These are here the examples of the research holes, which were later closed, otherwise water could leak out or even some gas could come out. Yet with gases, we did not have many problems here in our mine. Miners were even tolerated to smoke inside the mine. This is a very different situation than in coal mines, where of course smoking is strictly forbidden because of the gas. Now, here you can see this place here in the mine was called sliding hole. So you brought a wagon here, turned it around, and you transported ore here on the lower floor. Such place where they were transporting ore down was called sliding hole, and sliding holes had their names too. This one, for example, was named Jeklenka after this rich ore. And down there it was also written where this material was going. So if you turn the wagon around here, you knew material was going from the 17th to the lower to the 15th floor. And also it was good to use some kind of a mask here because really a lot of dust went into the air when you turn the wagon around. Thermometer here is showing around 15 degrees Celsius, and this is the constant temperature at the mine, between 10 and 15. Outside it can be winter or summer, day or night. Here it is like this, like in a kind of a wine cellar, you can say. Now on the picture you can see the representation of the method of excavating here more in detail. Now we are here, minus 22 meters. This sliding shaft couchage, we'll see a bit later, lively down there. And see here, ore had to go 5 times down until the connection was established to the main shaft and the elevator that they were able to transport this material out. In the last time we had 2 main shafts. The biggest, the deepest was this Josef shaft. It was going almost 400 meters deep, yet today it's completely backfilled with material. They were maybe telling some jokes to one another. They took their meals. He's like holding a piece of bread in his hands. They want to show us that the meals were poor. They had to bring them from their homes. They got meals from the mining company only in 50s. So in the past, meals were like a piece of bread, homegrown fruits, homemade coffee, tea. Later, they were like sandwiches with salami and cheese, cans with fishes or with meat, mineral water, things like that. And there you can see also a bottle. This one is symbolizing that the majority of the miners were also drinking. You can imagine it was hard work, and they were making their own drink, which was called gerush. And gerush was made out of water, wormwood tea, and pure alcohol. All those ingredients mixed together. This was bitter and very strong. Yeah? And if they were drinking gerush too much, then they really maybe were hearing or seeing even the dwarfs. And here you have the dwarf, Berkmandels, on the left in the red coat near the bench, waiting if he'll get something from the lunch. Because we said in the past, miners claimed you could make the dwarf happy by leaving him some food. And if happy, he was then showing them with knocking on walls where they should dig to find it. So in the past, here it was also a system like this. If somebody made something wrong, for example, he came on work lately, he was then punished by bringing it out, cleaning it, because you can imagine it was very smelly.
Am terminat cu vizita în Mina, mi s-a părut foarte interesantă și, sincer să zic, aș dori să văd și pe la Roșia Montană lucrul acesta, acest tip de ghidaj.
To our school here in Idrija. So our school is the biggest and the oldest lay school in the whole world that is working uninterrupted since it was established, and that was in 1876. So last year we celebrated 145 years of working. So we have quite a strong tradition here, and we teach lace making to children and also adults. And we have around 450 children every year who are learning lace making, and also around 100 adults. Yes. So we work like, if you compare with the music school, something like this. So it's free time activity for children, after school activity. Yes, and they have lessons 2 times a week for 2 hours. Yeah, so 4 hours a week. And we have employed 6 teachers of placemaking who teach in the primary schools. So not in this building, but in primary school here in Idrija and villages nearby. Yes, because most of the children join the lace making lessons at the age of 6. So very young children, and they can stay as long as they like. They can be with us through all of the primary school, they can finish earlier as they wish. Yes. So everything you see here was made by children of our school. And if you come closer here, they are starting with laces shown here. So with laces like this, let's say. These are the easiest laces. So you also see every lace has a name and a surname of a child that made it, and also ages. So
Oh,
7 years. This is also
so also 7,
Mhm.
12 years,
Yes,
11.
these are a little bit. It takes around 4 to 5 years to learn all those lace making techniques. And with these circles, they show what they have learned. So every this circle has a different technique.
Okay.
So these are more advanced laces. So children are a little bit older, like 10, 12,
11, I
11,
see.
yes, years like this. And of course, these first laces are more colorful because children love to choose color they like. It motivates them, but they do later. They do like more white or off-white colors. So.
More simple in colors.
Yes, more simple is in colors, or maybe it's easy to see the mistakes. Yeah, yeah. But those white are more traditional laces, yes. And these are we can call it masterpieces. So
Okay.
it's also made by children up from 11 years and above. So yeah. Have you seen this before? No?
No.
Okay, I will show you. So this is the pillow. On the pillow we work, and we need also the basket made of wood. And these are bobbins, which are wooden sticks where the thread is wounded. Um, and we also need a pattern, of course. So this is like a plan for the lace maker. So we work on the pattern. Here I have one traditional Idrija lace, and bobbins are always in pairs. So like this one pair, another pair, so two and two of them. And these are those vertical threads. And one pair is, we call it worker pair, which is going left and right through all of the vertical pairs. So, and we also need pins to put them in the middle of those lines. And we work like this.
How long does it take for an adult to do something like this?
Something like this, let's say for one lace maker with more experience, 10 to 12 hours to finish this
And
one.
for a child like 11 years old?
For a child, I would say a little bit, 2 hours more, let's say.
Oh,
Yeah.
big difference.
It depends on how good the child is.
It depends your personal dexterity.
Yes, of course, yes. So, yes, like this. But, of course, we can compare, let's say, this lace to that one in the middle by the size, but for that one, the girl needed around 70 to 80 hours. So it's completely different way also more complex, and there are many different techniques used. And it's also, let's say, I started that one here, and then I just follow this path through all of the pattern and then finish here. But here, let's say this leaf is made separately, so
And after that, you need to stitch them together.
yes, and with the crochet hook, and also you have to, let's say, make one leaf, and then you have to tie all the pairs, to cut them off, and then tie them.
Row?
The plate, yeah, I can here, oops, here, so, yeah, so like this. So if you would like to try, I can show you slowly. So it's no big deal. I will just lend it a little bit. This is also the first lace the children make. It's called the plate. So it goes like this. So here on the right side, we twist right over left, and here also right over left, and then the middle ones you cross left over right, like this, and tighten, and again right over left, and here also right over left, and then the middle ones left over right, and tighten. So the middle ones left over right, and then you tighten, yes, like this, and here also, yes.
Cărucioarele de Mina în ziua de astăzi sunt folosite în multe alte lucruri.
Au primit o a doua viață.
Da, așa se poate zice și așa. Se văd și casele tradiționale din zonă în care obișnuiau să trăiască minerii. Într-o astfel de casă trăiau mai multe familii de mineri. Undeva pe la 16 oameni, din ce mi s-a zis. Bărbații lucrau în mină.
Femeile se ocupau de țesături.
Da, Dantelei de Idrija. Iar bărbații lucrau în mină undeva de pe la 15 ani. Deci, copiii nu lucrau în mină, dar începeau destul de devreme. Aici am dormit azi noapte. Acolo, a doua mașină este venul nostru. Da. Este un loc special pentru autoroute, gratuit. Aici se poate alimenta cu curent. Da. Da.
Așa, aici sunt deversare apă neagră, deversare apă gri, încărcare cu apă curată. Așa, uite acolo.
Uite, aveam și Wi-Fi gratuit. Maxim 3 zile ai voie să stai.
Da. Și următorul stâlp e pentru alimentarea cu curent.
Pentru autorolot.
Da, pentru autorolot, dar ai nevoie de priza de camping ca să poți să recorda acest model.
Și la 3 la fel?
Da, la toate e la fel. Ai niște cazul.
Asta nu e altfel?
Nu. Aici e pentru servisare.
Da, este contracost și apoi contracost
Da.
10 litri 10 cenți. Deci un preț mai mult decât rezonabili. Cu 1 euro primești 100 de litri de apă.